Get that filthy kid away from my $90 million Gulfstream before he contaminates something. Evelyn Carrington snapped, her voice slicing through Hangar 7 at London Heathrow like a winter wind. Her hand, manicured and gloved, pointed at 13-year-old Marcus Jones, who stood with his coat zipped too high against the chill. He was small amid the giants of aluminum and titanium, a thin silhouette framed by the hulking private jet that had grounded Evelyn's empire for 6 nerve-wracking weeks. 6 of the world's top aero engineers had failed. They had run quantum-level diagnostics, acoustic decompositions, and simulations that required government-caliber servers. Black boxes had been chewed over and spit out with no conclusions. Each time the jet climbed to cruise, its twin engines, rolls something powerful enough to scare comets, shut down in unison at 39,000. Emergency landings. Headlines. Stock slides. A vital merger with a Tokyo conglomerate hung by an invisible thread. Security moved like a tide toward Marcus. He didn't flinch. He held a wrinkled photograph of a laughing older man, a grandfather who'd taught him how to listen to machines. The picture was his talisman, the engine sheds at the old RAF maintenance yard, his makeshift school. He had slept in the back of a van for a year, cleaned planes at night for a sympathetic foreman who paid him cash, and eaten leftover airline meals with the same reverence pilots gave pre-flight checks. "Let me try," Marcus said so softly that the words almost dissolved into the bright hangar lights. That whisper did something the cameras and crowds could not. It unsettled the certainties in the room. Evelyn studied him, eyes colder than the concrete floor. Around her, engineers smiled at the polite smiles of people sure of their domain. Dr. Laura Finch, a woman whose MIT doctorate had become a calling card at conferences, was in the center. Her team's instruments had both declared the jet nominal. "We're not running a children's experiment, Miss Carrington," Laura said. "This is an asset. This is millions of livelihoods." Marcus's presence was an offense to the logic of the hangar, but Evelyn's fortune had recently become an urgent, exposed nerve. The merger would be dead if she missed the flight. Her board was whispering. Investors were nervous. She made a decision that felt like rolling dice under a chandelier. 1 hour, she said. "You have 1 hour. Prove it, or you're gone from this property forever." Her voice held a challenge and a bargain, salvation or exile. Marcus nodded, hands clenched on the photograph. Captain Fiona O'Shea, a veteran pilot with gray in her braid and a calm that had guided planes through volcanic ash clouds and mechanical fires, stepped forward. She believed in skill over pedigree. "I'll supervise," she said. 1 hour. Full ground test. You get 30 minutes alone with the craft, then we do a simulated flight. They cleared the hangar. Cameras kept rolling, social feeds lit with incredulous headlines. But inside, beneath the floodlights and the hum of idle equipment, Marcus moved with a quiet that made the jet sound like a breathing animal. He put his palm flat against the fuselage, then against the cowling of the left engine. He listened. It was a ritual passed down from a man who'd been a radar technician in the RAF and who'd taught Marcus to count cycles like heartbeats. "Machines sing if you listen right," the grandfather had said. "They tell you what's wrong in a rhythm." Marcus had learned the dialect of bolts and bearings. He spent nights under the hulking bellies of grounded aircraft feeling vibrations run through his bones. He asked to start the left engine first. The technicians obliged, the turbines spooling to life in a roar like a contained storm. Everything on the monitors read textbook perfect. Marcus closed his eyes. He felt the left engine's pitch, subtle micropulses in its exhaust harmonics. Then the right started, and the hangar filled with twin thunder. To everyone else the noise fused into a thunderous symmetry. To Marcus it was 2 voices trying to harmonize, but beating at slightly different tempos. "Your left's running at a different microphase," he heard himself say. "It's trying to compensate for its partner." Dr. Finch smiled thinly. "RPM variance of 0.3% shows normal operation," she said. "Our systems detect variations to millions." Marcus shook his head. "It's not about numbers alone. It's about the way the new control module talks to them. It's harsher, like yelling." The engines shut down to quiet it. A ripple of laughter. Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Explain that in engineering terms," she demanded. Captain Fiona translated Marcus's metaphor into something the instruments could accept. A timing mismatch between the new avionics sampling frequency and the legacy engine control units. Aliasing creating destructive beats. Marcus had noticed a harmonic interference pattern. The new flight control firmware emitted impulses that overlapped the engine controller's control loops, nudging them out of phase in rare, compounded conditions at cruise. "Sampling aliasing," Marcus said, repeating Fiona's words. He asked for a basic laptop and an old signal analyzer. The sorts of devices his grandfather had used, unloved in a world that preferred black boxes and vendor support contracts. Someone handed him a battered kit from the corner of the hangar. He began to show them. He patched a simple filter, a small software mediator that adjusted the timing and smoothed out the pulses between the avionics and the engines. It was elegant because it was simple, a translator that slowed one voice to match the other, rather than replacing either. Laura Finch's lips thinned. Her data had not shown anything catastrophic. Her pride prickled. Evelyn watched with the countenance of someone who had learned to control outcomes with contracts and lawyers, not lullabies. If this child succeeded, it would mean her empire was saved by a homeless kid in a jumper, and that was a humbling narration she had not booked. The test, full simulation. Altitude, speed, environmental conditions identical to the flights that had failed. Marcus's mediator slid into the system. The engines came to life, then rose into the simulated cruise. For 90 heartbeats that stretched like rope under tension, all readings stayed green. No warning lights. No false shutdowns. When the systems held, the hangar breathed as one. Applause spilled from the periphery, but Marcus didn't look at it. He closed his eyes, said a shaky prayer, and pressed the photograph to his chest. Evelyn's face, unreadable until then, softened in a way that surprised her own advisors. She reached into her jacket without looking, drew out a check for $30,000, an awkward symbol for a fortune she carried like a shield, and folded toward the boy with 2 words that were heavier than money. "Come home," she said. "My wife and I will take care of you." Outside, social feeds ignited. The story fractured into million variations. Angel child, corporate miracle, humbling of arrogance. Universities and pundits argued about the plausibility. Dr. Finch's consultancy faced questions. Editors demanded explanations. Evelyn announced the Marcus Jones Foundation the next day, promising scholarships and a program to find talented kids lost to the system. Then a twist. 2 days later, an aviation forum leaked internal memos from the avionics supplier. A software update, pushed to satisfy an aggressive certification deadline, had cut corners. A new sampling routine that hadn't accounted for rare phase interactions with legacy hardware. The supplier had quietly suggested a patch would be needed only if tests revealed windowed phase coupling. An obscure technical note buried 3 pages deep. The memos suggested the vendor prioritized schedule over exhaustive regression checks. The public reaction bifurcated. Some cheered Marcus as a savior who revealed corporate recklessness. Others said he was an accident of circumstance who had merely patched a vendor's error. Evelyn faced a moral calculus. Pursue corporate accountability and risk a legal war with a supplier whose tech powered planes worldwide, or manage the narrative and build the foundation. She chose the foundation and a quieter settlement. The supplier issued a global patch, and independent commissions recommended changes in testing protocols. As media fury turned into slow-burn scrutiny, Marcus navigated a different interior. He had a home now, food that wasn't scavenged, a room with a ceiling that didn't leak, and a school that smelled of new books. But he also had fame, and fame ate privacy. Cameras followed his steps. Interviews asked for miracles. Professors wanted to replicate his method. He agreed to teach, but not to be weaponized as a mascot. A final, softer twist arrived months later in a phone call that Dr. Finch placed one autumn morning. She sounded older in the way people sound after shame and work. "Marcus," she said haltingly, "I'd like to learn more about how you listen." He invited her to the RAF yard where he still went sometimes to be alone with metal. She came, hands empty, and listened as Marcus walked her across the rumps of grounded turbofans. He taught her to close her eyes and count minute variations. She asked questions without condescension. That day, no cameras watched. Evelyn's foundation funded community workshops and an academy that combined acoustic empathy and systems engineering, a protocol Marcus insisted be named for his grandfather. The academy took children from shelters and taught them circuitry, signal processing, and the discipline of listening. Marcus sat on the instruction floor in scuffed trainers, showing kids how to feel a bearing's whisper through their palms. Years after the hangar incident, an industry journal published a feature titled, "When Humility Rewires a System." Dr. Finch's name appeared not as a fallen icon, but as a collaborator who'd revised diagnostic protocols to include cross-disciplinary audits. Evelyn kept her board influence, but spent more nights at the academy than at her penthouse. Marcus's photograph of his grandfather sat on a mantle, where he sometimes caught his reflection and remembered the nights in the back of vans. The hangar day became more than a viral beat. It changed how engineers calibrated tests and how corporations listened to the margins. People argued about whether a boy's intuition or a vendor's oversight had mattered more. But Marcus kept repeating his grandfather's line, not as a slogan, but as a practice. Machines don't lie to children. They save their secrets for hearts that still remember how to listen. And when asked in quiet moments why he'd tried, he would smile and say simply, because nobody else was listening.